Welcome back. Fresh crisis erupted in the Middle East on Wednesday, December the 10th, after a Palestinian minister died at a protest in the West Bank. Senior Palestinian officials said Zaad Abu-In had been suffocated and beaten by Israeli soldiers. Israel, however, said the 55-year-old minister had a heart condition and suffered a heart attack brought on by stress.
Crowds gathered in the West Bank on Thursday for the funeral of Zaad Abu-In, the cabinet minister in the Palestinian National Authority (PNA), who died during clashes with Israeli soldiers near Ramla on Wednesday. Wrapped with a Palestinian flag and carried by a van, the coffin of Abu-In was taken from the Ramla Medical Center to the PNA headquarters in the city. President Mahmoud Abbas and other high-ranking officials joined the funeral, proceeding to Ramla's graveyard for the burial. The president also declared 3 days of mourning in Palestine from Thursday to Saturday to mark Abu-In's death. However, conclusions about the cause of his death are conflicting, even among the joint Israeli, Jordanian and Palestinian teams of autopsy pathologists. Israeli officials say Abu-In suffered a heart attack due to pre-existing conditions. The Palestinian Authority has accused Israel of murder, saying tear gas and rough treatment killed the leader, a pattern they fear will repeat leading up to the Israel government elections in March. Minister without portfolio Zaad Abu-In died on Wednesday, December 10, after being shoved and grabbed by the neck by an Israeli policeman during a protest over Israeli settlement activity. Minister without portfolio Zaad Abu-In died on Wednesday, December 10, after being shoved and grabbed by the neck by an Israeli policeman during a protest over Israeli settlement activity. The incident comes at a time of heightened tension between Israel and the Palestinians, following months of violent unrest in Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and the Israeli-occupied West Bank.
Meanwhile, the ambassador of the State of Israel to Nigeria, Mr. Uriel Palti, says it is possible for Israel to coexist peacefully with Palestine. He gave his opinion at a public lecture titled "The Arab-Israeli Conflict: Is Lasting Peace a Possibility?" The lecture was organized by the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs here in Lagos. Can the Israel-Palestine conflict ever be resolved? That is the question in the minds of everyone gathered here. And who better than the ambassador of the State of Israel to answer this?
Uriel Palti is a diplomat by the principle of ius sanguinis in international law. That is by blood descent. So the blood flowing in his capillaries, in his veins, it is diplomatic blood.
But at first, it seemed as if Ambassador Uriel Palti himself did not know the answer.
I don't know whether there'll be a lasting peace, but I will try to show you or to try to analyze to you what's going on in our neck of the woods. If there'll be a possibility to put up a map of the Middle East, I'll try to explain to you what's going on.
However, after going down memory lane and tracing the wars Israel has fought and won with other Arab nations, the ambassador said the only way peace can be achieved is through dialogue.
What we can learn from this, that Sadat understood that after 5 consecutive wars with Israel, after 30 years of hatred, of warfare, that if you want, by the way, he gained all the Sinai Peninsula back to Egypt until what they call the last centimeter. If you want to get back something from Israel, if you want to have the goodwill of the United States, you should negotiate peace with Israel.
Israel is a country in Western Asia situated at the southeastern shore of the Mediterranean Sea. It shares land borders with Lebanon to the north, Syria in the northeast, Jordan on the east, the Palestinian territories comprising the West Bank and Gaza Strip on the east and southwest respectively. It also shares borders with Egypt and the Gulf of Aqaba in the Red Sea to the south. As the Syrian war continues with no end in sight at the moment, the United Nations says Western countries have promised to increase the number of Syrian refugees they will accept for resettlement to up to 100,000 over the next few months.
Amateur videos posted on the social media site last Friday shows Islamic State militants fighting against Syrian government forces in the eastern province of Deir al-Zor. The clashes intensified after a suicide bomber detonated a tank at a Syrian air base in the area. A second clip uploaded and filmed at night shows a dark sky with a slowly moving blazing light. Sounds of gunfire and explosions can also be heard throughout. The video purports to show clashes between the radical Sunni group and forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad after the suicide bombing. One Islamic State Twitter account published 2 photos of a smiling man it named Abu al-Faruq al-Libi, who is said carried out the suicide operation. An al-Qaeda offshoot, Islamic State has been gradually consolidating control of the oil-producing Deir al-Zor region this year. Assad's forces have held on to the local military airbase and parts of the provincial capital. Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency urged rich nations on Tuesday, December the 9th, to show solidarity with Syria's neighbors by making pledges to resettle the most vulnerable Syrian refugees, including torture victims and women caring for children on their own.
We all know that the conflict in Syria has triggered the most dramatic humanitarian crisis the world has faced for a long time. More than 3.2 million registered refugees, much more than 4 million if we count them all. In the surrounding region, Syrians are the largest population under UNHCR mandate. And the neighboring countries, Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, Iraq and Egypt, have been generously hosting these refugees.
Since anti-government protests in 2011 spiraled into civil war, more than 3.6. Since anti-government protests in 2011 spiraled into war, Since anti-government protests in 2011 spiraled into civil war, more than 3.2 million Syrians have registered as refugees in the region, with neighbors such as Lebanon, Jordan and Turkey bearing the brunt of the emergency. Faced with overwhelming numbers, Syria's neighbors have started restricting access to people fleeing the conflict. Faced with overwhelming numbers, Syria's neighbors have started restricting access to people fleeing the conflict.
In 2011, you'll recall, when the Syrian war started, the primary purpose was to enthrone democracy just like other nations involved in the Arab Spring. But now the conflict has taken another dimension with the emergence of the Islamic State militants fighting for control. To discuss this Hydra-headed war with us on Diplomatic Channel is Professor Charles Dokubo of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs.